Blog Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome back to the Liberated Sensitive. This is the show where I and sometimes other people talk about everything that has to do with being a highly sensitive person. I am Kim Gilster. I am a life coach, and I specialize in helping other people like me who are highly sensitive people to really become empowered and free and liberated. To find out more about that, I will give you contact information, etc., at the end of the show. So, without further ado, as the description implied for today's show, I wanted to talk about how triggers are different for highly sensitive people. Basically, what I have learned is this. When people who are not highly sensitive triggers, they can be pretty sure that their triggers are always about them. It's, I would think, pretty darn linear for them. And when I've talked to people who are not highly sensitive, that's the way that they discuss their triggers. However, when we are a highly sensitive person, we have this empathy thing going on. We feel other people so much deeper. But at times, it makes things very, very, very confusing as to, well, is that me feeling that, or is it somebody else, and et cetera, and it can just really get us into all sorts of self-blame or blaming them or, who knows what. But the blaming seems to be key, and either way, for a highly sensitive person, it makes us feel weak. It makes us feel like a victim. It can just cause a multitude of huge problems and really make it so it's difficult to function in the world. And it's difficult to work with our triggers. So I wanted to relate to you some of the ways that I have gone about figuring out how this occurs, why it occurs, etc. I think one of the most poignant moments in my life was some years ago when I was in a very intimate romantic relationship with another person who it happens to be highly sensitive. This person came to me at one point and said, we need to stop having these psychic wars. I was really taken back by that. I, tried to listen, of course, and have compassion, etc., because that was already my way. I had done a lot of work on myself, both with therapists and spiritually, and etc. But I really didn't understand what this person was saying. I was trying to figure it out. Yeah, it had occurred to me that there was a lot of back and forth going on when it came to the energies that we were feeling. We discussed this a lot at this point, or up until this point of our relationship, But I in no way felt like I was doing anything to attack them. And so part of me was offended, because I never felt that I was doing anything to attack anybody, not very often anyway. And if I did, I always felt somehow justified because I felt, oh, well, if this person is attacking me, etc. But with people that I was truly close to, it was exceedingly rare, if at all, that I would ever attack them. And I was very hurt by that. But I was somewhat determined to make this relationship work because I was truly, truly deeply and madly in love with this person. So I went about starting to try to figure out how this was occurring. One of my first responses to them was, I'm not doing that. And I actually purposely sent energy towards them of what it would feel like if I were doing that. And they felt it and were taken back by it. But at the same time, I started questioning, really, how is this working? Because it was very difficult for me to differentiate myself from them. And I would assume it was very difficult for them as well. But I started learning. I went through a whole lot of pain, especially after we broke up, and I was still feeling them. Many of us who are highly sensitive still feel people, whether or not they're in the same room with us, particularly those that are close to us. And I would constantly feel them, and there was just all this back and forth. And I was just always, praying and hoping and wishing and doing everything that I could to just beg that they would just leave me alone, that, I could just feel loved. And at the same time, I was trying to take responsibility for my part. And then I ran across, different ways than I had worked with before in working around my emotional triggers. And as I began to do that, I also started taking a lot more responsibility for myself. I started, making it okay to feel however I was feeling without judgment. That was very important. And it's something that I help other people to do to this day. It is probably one of the most important things that we can do, whether you're sensitive or not, but particularly when you are a highly sensitive person. Because to judge any kind of emotions or feelings is to just sit and blame of yourself, and then eventually blame the other people if they're in alignment with things that are coming from another person. So how do you differentiate, what it is that is coming from somebody else or coming from you? My answer to that is, at first, you don't. At first, when you're working on differentiating, what you do is you say to yourself, okay, I'm in alignment with this. So because I'm in alignment with this, because I feel this so deeply, it's obviously then triggering something inside of myself. And all I can do, and that is genuinely healthy anyway, is to work with my feelings. I'm going to say that again. The only truly healthy thing that you can do is to work with your feelings. Again, accepting them and loving them just the same way that you would do with a baby or a little animal. Unconditionally loving your feelings and yourself. What that does for the highly sensitive person is that, once we learn to be open, once we learn to, really work our triggers, which I've talked about in the past, you can check out some of the other episodes where I give instructions on how to do that. Once we reprogram the subconscious is really what's going on, and put our core self in charge, when we start really coming from the heart, where we're not having this interrupter of the subconscious and all of this false stuff that causes us to blame, et cetera, what ends up happening is this. I still feel other people. I very much feel them. As a matter of fact, I feel even more now than I did before, at least consciously. But what I don't do is I'm not quick to blame. I'm not quick to be on the defense. I'm not using protection. I am absolutely free and empowered. And I see that a lot of people who are sensitive, oh my gosh, even take what I'm saying online in this really interesting vein. And, I am not careful, but I'm coming from the heart in the things that I write, in the things that I say, and I'm never coming from a space of anger with it. And yet, there are people, because they get triggered by my words, who will start saying, you're angry. You're in your ego, meaning that I'm being egoic, et cetera, et cetera. I'm putting out things that I know. Okay? I'm not putting out things that are, meant to trigger somebody. They may or they may not. We can definitely clean things up, but at the end of the day, we need to be in our authenticity and really coming from our heart, and be considerate and kind, but to go around your whole life with this expectation that you should be nice and et cetera is actually blaming yourself. So there's that aspect. But then there's the other aspect. So these people are highly sensitive, and so what they've done is anything that's coming to them where it triggers them that somebody else has said, they assume what's being triggered inside of them, the other person is doing something to them. And trust me, I've done that. I've done that so much in my life. It's incredible. Well, I wasn't necessarily wrong most of the time about, what was happening with the other person outside of myself, whether it was in person or online or whatever. At the same time, there were times I very much was, because there were things inside of me that were being triggered, and, my program said, oh, well, you're to blame. You are to blame because what you said triggered me. And then I wasn't able to really see, even with the people who were having more issues, who may have been angry, who were frustrated and in pain, I wasn't really able to approach them with compassion because it's always on the defense. I was always trying to protect. I was always, saying, oh, well, I'm a really sensitive person, so, I have to be careful and cautious and all of this. And really, it was just hamster wheel. Did I grow? Yeah, I grew. I grew in many ways. I grew to the point where I started getting in relationships with other people who were more like me, who were more highly sensitive, instead of looking for relationships with people who were not sensitive, and so I read as being, more narcissistic or what have you. And by the way, the person that I was in this instance that I was in a relationship with, who was a highly sensitive or is a highly sensitive person, I ended up thinking this person was narcissistic for quite some time, that somehow maybe they were a psychopath, that, they were coming to me, beating up on me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in essence, all that was really happening was I was feeling their pain. And yes, of course, there were times that they were angry at me, and I felt that. But there's nothing wrong with sometimes being angry or not really angry. Well, for a while, emotionally, the anger emotion can be okay. And I covered that in my last segment here. So if you're interested in learning about anger and how that works, please look at the show that I did 2 weeks ago, Thursday. I don't remember exactly what date that is. Let me see here. That would have been on the 4th. Yes. a wonderful show. I got a lot of really good feedback on it and been told that it was very freeing for a lot of people. So check it out. So let's see, the tools. So what are some of the tools that we can use to be able to differentiate? Always advise about anything when we're having difficulties is don't do your best anyway to not react right away, especially online. I mean, online, you have time. You can really sit with something that's being said, the vibrations that you're feeling from other people. And by the way, sometimes I've noticed that there's actually things coming in from other people that are not even a part of the conversation. And so there's all of that to differentiate. But ultimately, if you are really triggered, then you need to work your trigger. And you need to sit with it. And if you're, and I've always said this, if you're really, really highly emotional, there is really the only thing that you can do with that is that's a lot of pain. Your subconscious is really going to try to override everything. And so the best thing to do in that situation is breathe. If you have to go to the extent of taking a long hot bath or, you know, whatever you can do, but just allow that energy. Feel it, love it, know that it's there to help you to change just like any other kind of pain. It's asking to be addressed and asking to be felt, and it doesn't need to be judged. So you're really highly, highly emotionally triggered. But there are other types of triggers that happen that don't really register as being super emotional because we don't have, you know, this overwhelm that happens with them. Instead, they feel more intellectual. So the number one thing that I advise the people that I work with, my clients, to work with at first is when they feel themselves blaming. So, you know, you're maybe reading a news story where, you know, somebody's murdered somebody or, you know, somebody's robbed somebody, and you feel yourself saying, oh, yeah, you know, that person needs to be jailed, and that person, you know. And it's really this space of blaming. That's you being emotionally triggered, believe it or not. Or, you know, somebody who is coming to you and telling you a story, and, you know, you feel for your friend because you feel like, you know, somebody's wronged your friend, and, you know, you want to take up arms because, hey, this is just wrong. Work with it first. I'm not saying to not act on things and, you know, and try to work in the world and make the world a better place. Absolutely not. When we do so out of a space that's more empowered and not out of a space that's triggering, we actually come to some realizations of things that we can do that will be better for everyone concerned. It actually helps us to help the people who seem to be more the perpetrators, as well as the people who seem to be more the victims, because ultimately we're able to see everybody's pain and come at things from a space of compassion and really devise ways that are the most helpful for everybody so that we can all start getting out of this victim-perpetrator thing. So there's that. It really works. I see it all the time. I just ran across this beautiful video of this woman who, she had a younger son. I believe he was in his 20s, and he was murdered during a robbery. And she came to court. The young man who had murdered her son was there, and she just poured love on him. It was so genuine, and it was so unconditional. And she beyond forgave him. And she decided to work to actually help him because she knew that her son would want that. She knew that, you know, for her, she felt like, well, you know, it's difficult, but it was time for my son to leave. Otherwise, he would still be here. In the meantime, this young man's still here, and he's still hurting. He's in pain. And so I'm going to try to help him, my family, and everybody concerned to get out of this pain by acting with big love. Okay? And that's the space that we're really looking for. This woman, that woman's free. That no matter what happens to her in her life, I could clearly see it, that she will always be in a space of great empowerment and love, no matter what she goes through. And that's what I came to this planet to teach people. I really did. So when we get those intellectual type of triggers, what do? We go in and we feel it as deeply, deeply, deeply as possible, not through our brain, but through our heart. We just be with it. We be with it until we're as deep as we can possibly go. And then we ask our heart. When was the first time that we felt that way? You almost always go to a time, you will always go to a time, if it's the core of it, to a space that would have happened before you were 5 years old. It's true. And then you first you validate your child, okay? Not by trying to comfort them and tell them that everything's going to be okay, because it's actually invalidating, which we know from modern-day psychologists even, that we don't do that with little children anymore. When they're in pain, we validate the pain. It's okay to feel that way. I love you. I love you, and you can feel however you want to feel. And just like the people who are in little baby child bodies currently, our child too will come out of that very quickly. And then we'll have a conversation that is empowering. Not a conversation that says, I'm going to take care of you. No, you're already doing that. But a conversation that says, hey, we've got this. We have ways to figure this out. And even if we don't in this moment, which invariably you won't come across the trigger unless you do, it's the way that it works. But we will find a way. We know that we can manifest this in our reality because we're looking, we're working, we are moving forward. I am moving forward. For more on this too, you might want to check out my show. Just, search for it here on Blog Talk or on YouTube, or I believe also on iTunes, which is called Healing Your Inner Children. And I get into explaining the details of all of that. But meantime, you'll come out of it. It's usually only takes a few minutes, and you will feel strong and empowered and in love and like you want to fly. That's how you know that you're actually doing it correctly. So that's how we deal with our triggers and feeling the triggers of other people. Really, really quite simple. And yes, you're not crazy. As a highly sensitive person, you are feeling the other people's triggers. And yes, sometimes it can be overwhelming. And yes, you have every right to take care of yourself. And no, you are not weak. You are very strong. And that's why you have these abilities. Okay? So I want to tell you all now how to get a hold of me and get your 15-minute free consultation where I will talk to you about my program and how it works. I will tell you that you do need to commit to at least 2 months if you're going to sign up. But all you have to do is send me an email to theliberatedsensitive@gmail.com and just say that you were inquiring about the consultation and my coaching services. I'll be more than happy to set you all up. And you can also follow me on Facebook at The Liberated Sensitive. I right now have 2 pages because I'm converting one over. We'll look for the one that has the most likes on it. And I also have a Facebook group that is a support group for highly sensitive people, where I post, I try to post daily in there. don't always do it, but days I do, where I work to give you some inspiration and some tips and etc. And, I'm more than happy to take questions and have people discuss being a highly sensitive person. What I don't like in my group is, all the time feeling like a victim or blaming, actually. Saying you feel like a victim and just expressing your feelings is fine in the group. You're safe there. I personally, I don't like bullies, and so there are no bullies that I know of in my group, or at least people who are going to bully you. If, you feel like you've been bullied, that's, something that I'm more than happy as the admin to take care of. So, yeah. Oh, and my YouTube. So I also have a YouTube channel, which is also entitled The Liberated Sensitive. You can listen to this show. I do my best to put all my podcasts up there. In the future, I will also be making short videos on a plethora of subjects to include my services. And yes, I'm also working on a book, but we will see when that gets finished, because as anybody who's ever written a book knows, it takes some time. So until 2 weeks from today, you have a wonderful, wonderful life.